The message today is, the reading for today is Matthew 14:22 through 33. It's the good stuff. Jesus walking on water. Immediately, he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him up, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." I always find a sort of a struggle with some of these stories because, Jesus is out there walking on water, and the disciples, again, I actually always kind of feel like the disciples are possibly like a Scooby-Doo episode where there's somebody in charge, Thelma, and the rest of them are sort of running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And Jesus is always there. If you read the text, the first impression for me, maybe not for you, but for me, is always Jesus is a bit of a jerk. He's sitting there you also can't walk on water? You have little faith. What are you doing? It is me. And I think you have to look under the text a little bit. I think it's the same way that we have to remind our children all the time about the things that they're supposed to do. I don't know how many times right now Henry is going through a phase where he is spitting on everything, my son. And so I say approximately 20 million times a day, do not spit. But I do it from love. And I try to do it from a place of non-frustration. But I don't think it's an admonishment from Jesus. I think it's a reminder. And I think it is done with love. I was reading as I prepared for this morning, Nadia Bowles-Weber did a writing on this lectionary this morning, and she was saying that she doesn't love the "what would Jesus do" bracelets, because if you actually had the ability to do what Jesus did, we'd be raising people up from the dead and casting out their mental health issues. The reality is we can't do that, right? But we get to have the life that we lived because of what he endured, of what he was able to do on our behalf. And so certainly while it's a reminder to be more loving and be more accepting, it's not the be-all, end-all of the story. And she points out a couple, what she takes away from the parable, which was one, that, Peter steps off the boat. Nobody actually asks him to. Jesus didn't say, "Come on over." Peter's like, "I'm going to make this even harder on myself. I'm going to try and do what you're doing." And the reality is that we can't, right? If we were able to do what Jesus did, we would have no need for him to act as a thing to strive for, a thing to move forward for. I also sometimes struggle with these parables because I think most people make them too simple, right? We haven't had faith that has been tested. So you want to have this clockwork sort of universe. And I was listening to a woman who, when she was 26 years old, she had just gotten married. She had a 6-month-old baby. And when she was 26 years old, she had a massive brainstem stroke that she should not have survived. She did, but she has lots and lots of medical complications still from it. She has half of her face is paralyzed. She cannot walk. She's had 12 surgeries. She's had bad falls. And yet she has retained her faith. And she was giving a talk, and she said, you have to think of life when you've had these things that have happened to you. You have to think of your life as an assignment. What am I getting out of this? This is not meant to just be happy times. And that's the other thing that's in this parable is there's sometimes a belief that God's present is only, proof of God is only when there is no trouble, when the seas are calm, when it's sunny. We think that's God's love shining down upon us. But God's presence is usually most truly felt in the storm. And so we have this assignment to be a better person, to look at the trials and tribulations that have hit our life and say, what treasure can I extract from them? And this woman, Catherine, had another great thing that I loved, where she goes, what is the miracle here? She's like, clearly one of the miracles is that I survived. She's like, but I didn't survive unscathed. I'm still disabled. I still have significant challenges. So perhaps that's not the miracle. To have a set of expectations that, miracle means everything is repaired. And that's just not the reality that we all live in. It's been a particularly difficult summer for my son and I. He has discovered that his behavior can impact the outside world and that he would like to have his way. And he is very set on what he would like to do at any given time, which right now involves not wearing clothing for the most part. And it has been probably one of our most trying summers as a parent and a child. And it is hard to find God in those spaces sometimes. I ask all the time. I sent a message to a friend of mine saying, what are the odds? I definitely should start playing the lottery, because what are the odds that I have a husband who dies and a child that is severely disabled? Like, how do you get both of those cards in the same hand? And I think it comes back to, I have an assignment. I have an assignment. It's not one I wanted. It's not what I would have chosen for myself. It's not what I picked. And I don't also believe that God picked it for me. But I do believe that God is here to make sure that I can accomplish it, and gives me the strength and ability to hold on, and that I can endure because Jesus endured. And sometimes the enduring is all that we have. Sometimes we sink in the waters when we try to walk on them. And so I think about, if I was praying for my miracle, I certainly have prayed, right, when we first started suspecting that Henry had autism, I thought, oh, we'll just, I'll pray and we'll have like 6 months of speech therapy and it'll all be better. It'll be fine. And here we are 8 years in, and not a lot of language and many, many challenges. I watched my 2 nieces who are 3 and 5, and I have determined that 2 typical children is actually under the age of 5 is much easier than an 8-year-old with severe autism. But the miracle that I need to keep my eyes open for isn't the miracle of removing his disability. The miracle to keep my eyes open for is this morning, when out of the blue, he must have heard me talking about that we're going to a birthday party this afternoon. And he marched to the door and he said, "Happy birthday. Happy birthday." Like, let's go. Happy birthday. I didn't know he was listening. The miracle is that we have a diagnosis that he gets to live with. Not all children have that. Not all parents have that. The miracle is how much he works on being able to get the tiniest little skill. So the question is, how do we learn to love what comes after? How do we learn to love who we become in our assignment? And how do we hold the faith while we're in the storm? The reality is, right, if you had shown me the whole picture, probably even before I had the decision to have my son, I don't know that I would have made that decision. So I wasn't shown the whole picture, thank God. And I have learned to love what comes after. And the reality is that I just have to have enough faith to get from the storm to that place of being in love with your life and in love with your assignment. And so I hope as you go about your week that you can find those places that are hard for you. And remember that up until now, your survival rate is 100% on challenges. And the things, if you look back over your life that were really challenging for you and really hard, often become the defining moments of your life. You wouldn't be the same person with, you could have all your happy moments taken away, and you'd likely probably be pretty close to the same person that you are now. If you took away your moments of challenges, you would not be the same person that you are. And so can you have that faith in the moment, in the storm, in the hardest place? Can you have the faith that it will be okay? That while what's happening to you right now is not okay, you ultimately will be okay. And not only okay, you may have gone through something, you may have had an experience that will change your life forever, and in a way that you will come to love. So can you hold on to that faith in the moment, in the storm? I think that is what Jesus is asking us to do in this story, is hold that belief, even when it is hard. Amen.